He is used to putting on national broadcasts. So for him to be in this conversation platform with me, there's no pressure. He's not going to feel it at all. The one thing you are going to notice is his personality. Paul Hemming is with me. He is a director for TNT Sports, lead director for NHL on TNT. He's done a number of things in this industry, and he joins me on the Honest Something podcast. I'm Brian Fenley. I call different sports for different networks, and this is a place where, Paul, as you know, we're not only going to touch on your career life, but your personal life as well. Thrilled to have you on. I know this is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Brian. I really enjoy listening to your interviews, and just feeling blessed that you want to have me on today. So I look forward to it.
We're going to have a great conversation. And I think I want to start this conversation. You've got some jerseys behind you. Now, before we started, you showed me you have behind you directly, there's a couple of hockey jerseys, and then you've got some CFL as well, which we'll talk about because you were a director, TSN doing CFL. But how do you decide, as you see the limited number of jerseys you have, some signed, what you put on your wall?
Uh, they have to have like an emotional attachment to me. I've worked in the business, directed for pro events for like 24 plus years. So have been part of lots of really cool moments and got a chance to meet a lot of really good athletes. But it has to have an emotional connection for me. So the jerseys that I have behind me, the two directly behind me are my two favorite NHL players, and then I directed CFL football in Canada for 16 years. So the other four gentlemen are CFL Hall of Famers, and those were jerseys from games in moments where they set records, TD yardage, passing, and one of them is a Hall of Fame jersey. So it has to have an emotional attachment for me to make the wall.
You mentioned this to me before we started as well. You'd be the first to tell anybody that you wouldn't have set any records as a pro football player, but you got to be a director nationally in putting CFL on TSN in what you and your team did. How in the world do you do that? Where here you and we're talking, you grew up, hockey was your forte, and all of a sudden you make this change or you add this on when you didn't have a lot of experience as a player and you had to kind of figure everything out.
It was early in my directing career at TSN in Canada, and they came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do some college football for us." And I was like, "Okay, great." It was basic five camera coverage, but it allowed me to start to learn the game. I directed that for one season, and then I moved on to the CFL. And uh, you know, as you mentioned, being a Canadian kid, you get thrown on skates at 4 and put in organized hockey at 5, and you go on until it's time to go to college or play pro playing hockey. And so I'd done everything that I had done in hockey, and really felt like that was obviously my forte. Never played football. I'm 5'9" on my tippy toes. And I unfortunately went to the high school that had the city champions for football every year. And a lot of the players on our high school team would go to play college and Star College or go on to play pro. So I couldn't even be a water boy on that team. So when they came to me and said, "What do you know about football?" I'm like, "Well, other than tossing it around the backyard and knowing you get 6 and 1 for an extra point, not very much." So it was an immediate crash course into football. Hockey and basketball and other sports like that. You're either on offense or you're on defense. With football, there's offense, defense, and special teams, and all three of them are very important, and all three of them can decide on the difference between winning and losing. So, yeah, I learned it. I was very lucky. Each week we had meetings with coaches and players and sit down, and a lot of my former colleagues there were Hall of Fame football players. So I was just learned the game basically to the level to be able to direct it at a network level, and that is one thing I'm probably most proudest about in my career is the fact that I went from throwing a Nerf ball around the backyard to directing the biggest football games in Canada. I directed 6 Grey Cup championships, which would be the equivalent to the Super Bowl in the United States. Not comparing, but just in terms of the championship game, yes.
Absolutely love the way that the CFL plays itself out. I used to work in Spokane as a reporter, anchor of sports, and a lot of guys from Eastern Washington University would go on to be quarterbacks at that level at the CFL, so there was a lot of influence. So I have so much respect for that league and what they're doing. And you mentioned there was this, I don't know, maybe it felt like this, a peer pressure as a youngster to play hockey. Everybody seemingly in your community did. What did you feel as far as the peer pressure to have to be good at that sport? Because it seemed as if, as you said, almost everybody was immersing themselves in that sport.
Yeah, in Canada, it is the sport. With all due respect to soccer, basketball, it is the sport. You know, I grew up in London, Ontario, and there's that city has produced a lot of professional hockey players. Two of the goalies on the high school team that played while I was there went on to have long NHL careers. So it's that's the type of environment you're put in. Yeah, it's pressure packed. The thing I guess about Canada is there's so many options. If you don't make the all-star triple team, you can always play like at a high level in an initial league or whatever. I ended up, and also it depends on the size of the city where you live. London for me was what they classify as a double A town. So like I didn't play against triple A players in the Toronto area that would have gone on to be like Steve Stamkos and players like that. But I did achieve. I played travel at double A and won a provincial championship. So and then right after that, it was time to quit hockey and because I wasn't going to get drafted. So it was like, let's get to college and let's get a career going. So, but yeah, a lot of pressure, obviously. You eat, sleep, and breathe it. I've been involved in hockey at every level as a player, as a coach, as an official. So, yeah, it's in your blood.
What's your officiating style for hockey?
Let them go. Just as a former player, unless it's a foul that is going to directly contribute to the outcome of the game. If it's close, let them go. Let the players will always figure it out on their own.
How do you feel like having a background in officiating hockey actually makes you a better TV director with hockey?
Yeah, for sure. Any knowledge that you can have of the sport that you're working on, whether it be the rules, the players, the coaching staff, the stories, the support staff, the more that you can sponge up, definitely helps you be able to tell stories, while you're doing a game. And as a director, that is job number one is cover the game and tell and be creative in your storytelling.
What are the easiest stories to track down going into a big game that you're directing in your team? And what are some of the harder stories to try to uncover, unearth going into a game?
I eat, sleep, and breathe hockey 24/7, 365. So for me, when the season is on, I'm watching games every night. I'm reading all the storylines the next day. I'm reading, everything about it. So, when I arrive to do a game, I mean, I'm pretty buttoned up in terms of the storylines. We'll have a production meeting every night and decide what's the best way to attack those storylines. And in those production meetings, that's when you unearth the hidden gems because the play-by-play guy or the analyst will have already had multiple conversations with either players or coaches leading up to game day, and they'll also talk to them after the morning skate. And so that's when you unearth the gems, and then that's when you work together as a production team, producer, director, AD, and then with your announce booth to make sure that you do the best way in presenting those stories in a timely manner that work with the moment of the game.
If you were a fan and you are, and you're watching your work and you're a director, but if you had a chance to watch it unfold, if there was a level of accessibility that you wish, even beyond, not to say there are constraints, but beyond the technology that it affords with TNT and the stuff that you're able to pick up from an audio perspective and the angles that you're able to get with your camera. But if you're looking at like, gosh, that would be really cool from an accessibility standpoint as a fan and even as a director, what would be that next step for hockey that would be really interesting, you think, for the viewer to take in to add to the experience of consumption?
Two things there, Brian, and I mean, audio, I think would be the first one. I mean, to be able to have live mics And they have the experiment. They did actually do that in the CFL. TSN did a live mic with a quarterback, and we don't have enough time on this episode to get into the repercussions of how the players feel about that, how the coaching staff feels about that, how TV steals. But I mean, that would be the biggest one, because that, we already, the technology is such that we have amazing cameras, large and small, super mo, long lenses to get those intimate images. That all is already in place. But the one thing that you can't do is, feel like you're sitting on the bench and hearing what's going on. So those, I don't think that any of the pro leagues will ever allow to live mics. I think that would be awesome. But I understand the risks that you're dealing with there. But in terms of cameras, like an on ice camera, skate cam that you see, for big games, outdoor games, playoff games, championship games. That's good, because that allows you to be on the ice with the athletes and allows you to put the viewer in a position that they don't normally see the game from that angle. The other one too is aerial cameras. When we go outdoors for hockey, you'll see that we'll sometimes fly a super, spider, cable cam, sky cam above the ice. And I really think that bird's eye view is a really good one. Unfortunately, just with the logistics of the arena, with there being netting up all around the ends and, lower scoreboards, and the jumbotrons nowadays are getting so big that, that airspace is being taken up. But I would love to be able to fly a drone under the scoreboard, a live RF drone, and be able to take play-by-play off of it. I think that would be phenomenal. And I can only really speak for the NHL, because that's the only league that I'm familiar with inner workings with. And they're flying drones now. Inside, you've seen it on their Stanley Cup coverage. You've seen it on their All-Star coverage. I think if we can continue to push in that direction, that's just another unique angle. And from a storyline perspective and or a teaching perspective, it's an excellent angle to see hockey at, I believe.
Beyond just having the right camera angles, and you're talking about what the neat nuances that if presented would only enhance the experience for the viewer. But when you have a story that you like and you're trying to find the right timing in the broadcast to use it, what elements do you like to use to display that story to the viewers, and what you back it up with?
It depends on what the storyline is, but I mean, you can never go wrong with just a nice intimate shot of that athlete, right? Anytime, you can see the player like this or like this, it creates just a subconscious bond with the viewer. It's like it's an intimate shot, so you feel like you like that. You feel like you're in that person's personal space, and it's an intimate moment, and automatically it creates an emotional connection. So for me, I love to be able to just get really tight on the athletes and show like nice tight close-ups. But if it's a story, say about a player on the opposite team, maybe where they grew up playing against each other, then it's nice to either maybe show that as a split screen, and then certainly from the team or the player, we would have had a couple of pictures of them playing together in youth hockey. And so then that one you can get into graphics and video and stuff. But I mean, I'm a director, so my default answer always is going to be prettiest pictures. So that for me is always a goal when you're trying to tell a story.
What are the pictures that we would be seeing of you when it's not hockey season, and how you're spending your time?
Hockey season goes so long. We start ramping up meetings in August. We get into some preseason stuff in end of September. Season starts October. And this year we went through to the end of the Western Conference Final, which was like second week of June. Next year will be the Cup Final. That'll be the end of June. So I really have kind of July, August, and a little bit of September maybe. To kind of decompress and show remove, as I like to say, the season and try to wipe the slate clean for next year. So for me, it's just a lot of family time at home. I enjoy golfing. Enjoy, living in North Carolina, have access to the mountains, have access to the beach, can drive down to Florida in half a day. So just, enjoying family time, packing up the vehicle, going to the mountains, going to the beach, a little bit of golf, listening to music, watching movies, trying to get caught up on Netflix series that I've heard about all season, but haven't had a frame of, a second to watch. So that kind of stuff. I just like to, that's the 2 months where I'm able to physically, mentally, and emotionally balance myself out.
How good of a golfer are you?
I used to be really good, actually. I played high school golf, but and I would play 18, 27, 36 whole days. So I got down to like, a 5, 6, 7. But now for me, let's put it this way. My game is in direct proportion to the amount of adult beverages that I drink. So if I'm having none, I'm shooting like 120. If I've had a couple on the first nine, maybe I'll pull it together and shoot like a high 30s for the back nine. So I'm like a bogey golfer now at best. For me, it's just a chance to get out and spend 4 or 5 hours with good buddies, enjoy the beautiful weather down here, and just enjoy the bonding.
So it seems like when you've had a few that it's relaxing. With golf, where at least for me, I go over the ball and I think to myself, I have these thoughts, intrusive thoughts about, oh, I'm gonna miss it, I'm gonna hook it, I'm gonna slice it, I'm gonna hit a fade, I'm gonna miss the green, whatever it is on the approach shot. So your best work, it seems, even on the golf course, but I'm curious if it's beyond that, where it's like this idea of just do and not think. So like you're talking about that in golf, like how do you see that that actually helps you and you notice that in other aspects of your life too?
That is a great point, Brian. I mean, when you're in the chair directing, you can't think. You can't. I mean, it's all muscle memory. It's all reactionary because what you're doing is you're covering something in real time, like in that millisecond moment. Sure, like you have ideas in your head, like you'll watch a playback from your last game and say, I didn't like the way I handled that. I can do this better. So yeah, I mean, you have those mental notes, but when the game's going on, you can't think it. And with the speed of hockey, there's no time to think it. I mean, the puck's going up and down the ice at 25, 30 miles an hour and coming off their sticks at 100 miles an hour. So you're really just trying to, be in lockstep with them. And it's really a react and it's a muscle memory thing. Sure, there's cameras that you would like to be on at certain moments. For hockey, for me, I like to take that low center ice look of the player rushing up because I believe it's a more intimate shot and it shows the speed of the game, which you really have a difficult time, on hockey watching it from the main game camera angle. But yes, you have those, but you can't. You can't think. Like you can't overthink it. You just have to react to it. And having done thousands of games, I still make mistakes every night, but the ones not to make anymore.
Well, nobody's perfect, and yeah, we're all human. No matter if you've done it 10,000, it's always going to happen. Where that's the joy, I guess, if you want to call it that, of being a human. But the fact is, what was the first TV hockey game that you directed? What did that? How did you think you did compared to, say, if that person back then could see what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's this is a good story. I was a rookie director. I don't even know. I don't even think I had directed outside of the studio environment, and I was assigned to go to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, to direct the Canadian AAA, uh, youth. They call it midget boys hockey, and so these were like the top 15, 14, 15, 16-year-olds in the country. And it was taking place at the Calgary Saddle Dome where the NHL team plays. It was kind of a big deal. And it was my first time. I walked in the truck and it was the first time I ever looked at the monitor wall. And I'm like, wow, like this is cool. Like, I mean, I'd seen monitor walls, like in college and stuff, but like not actually, I was going to get to sit in front of this and this was going to be my canvas for the next, 2 days. But yeah, I remember it. And as soon as they dropped the puck and the red light went on, I froze up. And I just stayed on the game camera until the whistle blew. And then I would just cut to a close up of whichever random camera play, whichever random player the cameraman had. And I had my executive producer standing behind me, no pressure.
No pressure.
And he's like, I've paid for 8 cameras. I'd like
Oh,
to see some
jeez.
of them. Oh yeah, yeah. So I was
Oh
like,
my
all right,
gosh.
yeah, here we go. So I mean, I would say I kind of tiptoed in. I cut a couple of cameras, a couple more cameras that period, a couple more next. And so by the end of the first game, like I felt, wow, like I really nailed that. But yeah, out of the gate, my very first time, I was afraid to cut off the game camera in case something, you missed a goal or you missed something. I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. It's all right here in front of me. But no, it's yeah, the bosses wanted to see all the money they had put into the broadcast.
Your description earlier about football and how you didn't have a big background playing it, and then here you are directing it eventually on screen and on television. And I would think, from those years that I bring up another analogy or metaphor, and that is like we always talk about the quarterback and how everything seems to slow down for them in processing a defense the more they get the reps, the more plays and everything their processing speed heightens as they're able to see things a little bit faster. In what ways do you think that that's true as well for directing? Where yeah,
Live sport, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, live sports, definitely, 100%, Brian. I mean, because you don't want things going by you at the speed of the autobahn, right? You want them going by you at, well, snail speed maybe, because then that allows you to make the right decision in that moment. Um, you know, when we do a Stanley Cup, we could have anywhere between 25 to 30 cameras that could all
Wow.
have the shot that you need in that moment. But the great directors will pick the right one of that. Let's say you've got 10 options or five options or even four options. The great directors pick the right one the first time, you
Yeah.
know? And so you're only able to do that as it slows down for you. And it only slows down with reps. The more reps, the more times more games you do, the more times you see things, then it will slow down for you. But I will say the bigger shows that you graduate to work on when you have more cameras, like that very first football game I ever did had five cameras. And I think the last Grey Cup that I did up in Canada for TSN, we had like 36 or 37 cameras. So again, your level of, you start pushing, inching back up to that Autobahn speed when you start adding all those cameras, because I'll never forget my first Grey Cup. It was in 2008 in Montreal. The Calgary Stampeders were playing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and one of the teams, I forget what, the very very first series, the quarterback breaks the huddle, and we've got double low end zones, reverse cameras, double carts, handhelds on all sidelines, and they all break the quarterback breaking the huddle. And I look down at the wall, and I've got like 16 shots of great shots of the quarterback, and I just remember I took one. It wasn't the best one. I took another one, and I saw another one that was better. I took that one, and literally, I kid you not, I took four shots of the quarterback before he even got under the center. And
Wow.
it's just like, for me, again, it was just like, it was that Autobahn moment where it was just flying right by. But by the time I did my sixth, Grey Cup, I was like, okay, they break the huddle. That's the one I want. I know it. You know what I mean? So even doesn't matter how many years, you still have to, if it's the big show, you've got done many of them for it to slow down. If it's a regular season show or whatever, the more you do, the more it slows down and allows you to make the right decisions.
Well, what you said there, I got one more question for you. Paul Hemming is with me. I'm Brian Fenley. If we look at it from an overall big picture perspective, what about your life do you wish would slow down a little bit? We were talking about slowing down when it comes to directing, but just overall, what is going so fast for you right now that you wish you could just slow down just a little bit?
Life in general. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and it seemed like only yesterday she was born. So that part I would like to slow down. She has gone from me feeding her and changing her diaper to her sitting me down and saying, "Dad, we have to have a talk." I feel like really what goes on around the house, you're only up to speed at about 20%. We gotta fill you in on some stuff. Oh, geez, thanks, baby. I look at her and I see her from the day she was born. So it's scary how it's gone from 0 to 13 that fast. So just from a personal standpoint, to be able to, my work schedule is insane. With the exception of the Carolina, where I'm lucky to get a Carolina game, every game for me is a road game. So I'm gone before Super Bowl 3 days a week. After Super Bowl, when we moved to Wednesdays and Sundays, I could be gone 7 days a week. And then you hit the playoffs and you're gone for 2 months. So there a lot happens in your personal life in 2 months when you're not there. And I would just like that to slow down a little bit more, just so I could enjoy my family a little bit more for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I'm sure your daughter has a few things to say about, being 13 and telling you what to do. There's probably a few more things that she hasn't even told you about, but that's the joy of raising kids. And that's so cool that we were able to go there as well as we shine light not only on what you're doing professionally, but also personally. And that's what I love about this sort of platform. Paul Hemming, TNT director, sports, hockey, you name it, lead director for TNT, NHL and TNT, and what they're doing, the association between TNT and the NHL. Lots of fun. I'm Brian Fenley. Thanks so much, man. This was a joy to take this conversations in so many different ways.
Oh, your pleasure to talk to you, Brian, and many other guests. It's like I said, enjoyable listening, and it's awesome to be able to hit that side of it because typically when you reached out for a comment or you want to have somebody wants to speak with you, it's just tell us all about the toys and the TV and what can we expect, and yeah, and a big part of 50% of my life is what I'm doing at home too. So I love it.
And 100% of the time when you are home, you're taking orders from your 13-year-old. Of Paul Hemming, I'm Brian. This
100%.
is so fun, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, you got it. It was a pleasure. Thank you.